Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of holophase. We begin with our woven summary, only what we have already certified, nothing extra. So far, in episode 14, we have treated the holophase work as a compiler, not a story about the universe. We only accept public claims inside licensed finite windows. We extract structure from the cyclic comparability field phi, spoken as phi, mapping events to a circle. We build local lifts, take derivatives into the carrier A equals d phi tilde, certify domains by excision, and enforce invariance. We learned that in defect-free domains, meaning is the class, not the sketch, and defects are persistent obstructions. We then certified integer charges from closure plus obstruction and additivity from enclosure grammar. Now, with part 33, we walk into the next room. Because once we have more than one defect, more than one hole in the smoothness, something new becomes possible. Not new physics, new bookkeeping. And this is where people get tricked, again and again, across every scale. From knots in rope, to vortex tangles in fluids, to braided lines in plasmas, to wiring on circuit boards, to the way problems get entangled in organizations. The trick is simple. When many defects coexist, we can get complexity in two completely different ways. One kind of complexity is fake. It is just a messy drawing. The other kind of complexity is real. It is topology. Part 33 is the audit that separates those two. And we are going to do it in a way that a person with no science background can feel in their hands, like holding two rubber bands, two headphone cables, or two loops of string. So let's start there. Imagine we put two rubber bands on a table. Scenario 1. They are separate. Two loops sitting calmly. Scenario 2. They are linked like two links of a chain. In both cases, if we only do charge counting, the answer looks the same. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Two loops. But your hands know the difference. In scenario 1, you can lift one rubber band away and the other stays behind. In scenario 2, you cannot separate them without cutting one. That cannot separate without cutting is not a story. It is not opinion. It is not geometry. It does not depend on whether the loops are circles, squares, or wobbly shapes. It is pure structure. It is a topological fact. That is what Part 33 certifies. Part 33 says, when many defects coexist, the total structure is not always just the sum of individual charges. Sometimes there is extra invariant information in how they are linked, braided, or knotted. And the compiler demands one thing above all. If the linking information is real, it must be diagram independent. It must not change just because we draw it differently. So our mission today is to take multi-defect messiness and distill it into a clean, certified linking token. One that depends only on the essence of entanglement. We will call that essence the isotopy class. Now we translate that word into everyday language. Isotopy means you can continuously wiggle, stretch, slide, and reshape without cutting and without passing one loop through another loop, and without passing loops through the excised holes that represent the defects. If two pictures can be turned into each other by that kind of honest wiggling, then they are the same linking class. Same essence, different sketch. And our carry phrase for part 33 will be, complexity can be topology without new physics. Meaning, sometimes what looks like complicated interaction is just the same topological class drawn in a complicated way. And the revocation clause will be just as sharp. Any diagram-dependent effect is rejected as bookkeeping artifact. Now let's walk slowly from the single defect world we already know into the multi-defect world. In part 31, we learned defects are not things, they are certified obstructions, places where our smooth local language cannot extend. In part 32, we learned that once we excise those obstructions, loops around them can carry integer charges. The integer arises because phi lives on a circle. Closure on a circle plus obstruction forces whole counts. That is quantization as grammar, not as mystery. Now we have a new question. When we have multiple defects, is the world fully described by a list of integers, one integer for each defect? Or can the arrangement carry extra structural tokens? The rubber band example shows the answer. Yes, sometimes the arrangement matters. Two loops can be unlinked or linked. Both have charge 1 each, yet the pair has different structure. So we need a new layer of bookkeeping. Not just how many circles did we accumulate around each defect, but also how are the defects woven together in space. This is linking. And linking is not a geometric quantity like distance or angle. Linking is not about how far apart or how thick or how curved. Linking is about, can you separate them without cutting? Now, here is the danger. When people start drawing multiple loops, they start seeing patterns in the drawing that are not real. They see crossings in a picture and they think crossings are the invariant. But crossings depend on where you place the camera. Crossings change if you tilt a page. Crossings change if you redraw the same loop in a different style. So if we are going to make linking a certified token, we need a strict compiler rule. What we certify must not depend on the diagram. It must depend only on isotopy class, the essence under legal deformations. So part 33 is the diagram clean room. It is the place where we say we will not allow topology to become doodle culture. Now we formalize this in audio-safe terms with the gates. But before gates, let's build intuition with 3 everyday stories. First story, the headphone cable. You put your headphones in your pocket. You pull them out. They look like a tangled mess. But sometimes the mess is not a knot. It is just messy geometry. If you patiently pull and wiggle, the cable straightens. Other times, the mess contains a real knot. And no matter how you wiggle, you cannot undo it unless you pass one end through a loop, which is like cutting in topology terms. So we have 2 different complexities. One is removable by wiggling, one is not. Part 33 is the protocol for telling which is which in the language of defects. Second story, the city subway map. A subway map is drawn in a simplified, distorted way. Lines are not at real distances. Angles are not real angles. It is not geometry. But the connectivity is real. Which stations connect to which lines is invariant. 2 different subway maps can look different, but the structure is the same if you can trace the same connectivity. That is the idea. We want the connectivity of entanglement between defects, not the drawn picture. Third story, friendship circles. Imagine 2 friend groups. The charges might be the number of people in each group. But the deeper structure is whether the 2 groups are isolated or connected through shared people. If there is one person who belongs to both groups, the groups are linked. You cannot fully separate the social structure without removing that person from one group, which is like cutting a link. Again, arrangement matters beyond counts. That is the pattern. Linking is relational structure beyond individual attributes. Now we bring it back to our formal tokens, but spoken. We have defects. We excise them, creating a certified domain we can work in. Call it D prime. D after excision. Around each defect, we can choose a small loop that goes around it once. That loop is our probe. But the moment we have many defects, there are many possible choices of loops and many possible drawings. So we must certify a whole loop system, not just one loop. And then we must test whether any proposed linking measure stays the same under legal isotopy. Now we state the mission and core in spoken language. Mission. Ensure composite tokens depend on linking class, not diagrams or drawing conventions. Core. Complex behavior can be topology. The compiler demands diagram independence under certified isotopy. Now we deliver the gates in audio form as 3 audits. Gate 1. The certified loop system gate. We say, before we talk about linking, we must build a clean set of loops. One loop per defect, inside the certified domain D'. Each loop must be legal. Legal means it is closed. It stays inside D'. It does not cut through excise tubes. It has an orientation. And it does not intersect the other loops. And it must actually encircle its own defect in the intended way. Once, not 0 times, not 10 times. This is like saying, before we analyze knots, we must first confirm we are holding actual closed strings and not open threads. Gate 1 outputs a passport for the system. We can speak it like, we certify the loop system gamma, a set of loops, gamma 1, gamma 2, up to gamma n. Gate 2, the isotopy invariance gate. This is the heart. This gate asks, if we wiggle the loops continuously, without cutting, without passing loops through each other, and without passing through the excise defect holes, does the proposed linking quantity stay the same? If the quantity changes under such a wiggle, then it was not topology. It was diagram noise. This is the headphone test. If your knot measure changes just because you reshape the cable without cutting, your measure was measuring the shape, not the knot. So gate 2 is the wiggle test. But in our compiler language, we say isotopy. Isotopy means legal deformation. And we certify isotopy by checking that throughout the deformation, the loops never cross forbidden regions and never cross each other in a way that would require passing through. Gate 3, the broader invariance gate, INV. Because even if something is isotopy invariant, it must also be invariant under admissible redescriptions, different lifts, gate shifts, coordinate relabelings. Remember, in our entire holophase discipline, if a token changes under allowed redescription, it is not public structure. So gate 3 says, after we pass isotopy, we also pass invariance under redescription. Only then do we certify the linking token. Now we announce the prediction. Prediction. Diagram-dependent interactions vanish under isotopy clean accounting. What remains is the true linking class token. That is a huge sentence, so we restate it in everyday language. Most things people call linking effects are just because they drew the loops in a confusing way. When you clean the drawing and apply the wiggle test, the fake effects disappear. Only real linking remains, the kind you cannot undo without cutting. Now we give the falsifier. Falsifier. Linking invariants change under admissible isotopy inside a fixed certified domain. In everyday words, if we can legally wiggle the system without cutting anything, and the supposed linking number changes, then the linking number was never a real linking token. It was a drawing trick. Now we give the audit artifact. Audit artifact, linking logs plus isotopy tests plus diagram independence report plus failure localization. We say, the compiler doesn't just claim this is linked. It writes down which window passport we used, what domain D' is, which loops we chose, how we tested isotopy, which redescriptions we tested, and whether the invariant stayed fixed. If it fails, we localize why. Did we accidentally allow a loop to pass through an excised region? Did we change the loop system in a way that is not isotopy? Did we confuse a geometric measure for a topological one? Now, to make this not just words, we need vivid examples across scales. We will do 5. 1 in your hands, 1 in everyday systems, 1 in biology, 1 in materials, 1 in deep physics language, but still spoken simply. Example 1. Chain links. 2 metal rings. If linked, the linking token is 1 in the simplest case. If unlinked, the linking token is 0. Now here is the key. How you draw them can make them look linked or unlinked in a flat picture. You can draw 2 circles on paper crossing and it looks linked, but in reality, they might not be linked in 3 dimensions. So our compiler must never trust a drawing. It must use the isotopy test in the actual domain. This is why part 33 is called linking bookkeeping. It is bookkeeping because the mistakes are not subtle. They are the easiest mistakes humans make when they look at pictures. Example 2. Road detours. Imagine 2 construction zones in a city. Each construction zone is like a defect. You must go around it. Now consider a delivery route that goes around both zones. If the zones are separate, you can often split the route into 2 loops. One that goes around zone A, one that goes around zone B. Charges add. But sometimes the city layout forces the detours to intertwine. For example, the only bridge you can use to detour around zone A is also part of the detour around zone B, creating a kind of linked constraint. Now, the linking is not about distance. It is about whether you can separate the constraints without breaking the road network. Again, relational structure beyond sum. This is a good analogy for why multiple defects can have topology beyond charge sum. Example 3. DNA. Circular DNA sometimes forms links, 2 rings of DNA linked like chain links. Biologists literally measure whether the rings are linked because it changes how enzymes can separate them. This is pure topology. You can stretch the DNA, compress it, deform it, but if it is linked, it is linked. The isotope, wiggle, test is exactly what matters. And enzymes that cut DNA are literally performing the cut that topology forbids. So nature itself already knows the difference between deforming and cutting. Part 33 is simply giving our compiler the same honesty. Example 4. Defects in materials. In crystals, you can have dislocation lines, line defects. You can have many dislocations and they can tangle. Some tangles are real in the sense that they cannot be removed without changing the material structure drastically. Others are just the result of how you chose a coordinate description or how you traced the lines. Part 33 says, do not certify tangle tokens that depend on the diagram. Only certify linking class tokens that survive isotopy and admissible redescription. Example 5. Braided world lines, spoken carefully. We have to be disciplined here because dynamics is forbidden in episode 14. So we do not say defects move in time. But we can still mention this as an interface note, typed as I, interface only, because it becomes important later. Interface only note. When we later allow histories, the paths of defects through the history domain can braid, and braid class can become an invariant. But today, in part 33, we stay in the static domain. We only certify linking classes of defect loops inside the fixed domain, so we will not go further. Now we must also address a common confusion. People often confuse geometric measures like distance-dependent energies with topological linking. For instance, in superfluids or superconductors, vortices can repel or attract depending on their charges and environment. But that repulsion depends on distance and energy. Those are not topological invariants. So part 33 protects the program by saying, if your effect changes when you smoothly deform the diagram or change the spacing while staying in the same topology, then it is not a linking token. It belongs to higher layers. This separation is what keeps episode 14 clean. Now we put it all into one clear story. Audio ready. We imagine we are auditors in a clean room. We have a certified domain D prime, meaning we already did excisions around defects. We have a table. On the table are defects, holes in the language. We are allowed to draw loops around those holes. But we are not allowed to tell stories about forces or time or evolution. We only do structure. Our job is to answer a simple question. Is there any invariant information in how these holes are arranged beyond their individual charges? If yes, we must extract it as a token that is independent of drawing. So we do this. Step 1. We choose a certified loop around each defect. We keep them simple, small circles if possible. We record their passports. We call the set gamma. Step 2. We propose an invariant. For example, the linking number between two loops. We do not trust a picture. We compute or infer it in a way that is known to be isotopy invariant. Step 3. We run isotopy tests. We imagine we wiggle the loops in every way allowed. If the loops are unlinked, we should be able to wiggle them into two separate non-entangled circles. If they are linked, we will try, and we will fail unless we cut. Step 4. We run INV tests. We change lifts, we change coordinate labels, we change how we describe the same domain. If the token changes, it is revoked. If it does not change, it is certified. Now we summarize the outcome. If the defects are unlinked, then beyond charge arithmetic, there is no linking token. If the defects are linked, then there is extra structure, the linking class token. And it is precious because it is protected. It cannot be erased by smooth deformations. That's why topology matters. It gives structure that survives noise. Now we deliver the carry again and amplify it with the core insight. Complexity can be topology without new physics. Meaning, before you invent a new law, first check if what looks complicated is simply a different topological class. Because if it is topology, you can classify it with finite tokens: link type, knot type, braid type. You turn infinite geometric mess into discrete structural categories. That is an enormous compression of reality. Now we give the revocation clause in blunt audio language. Revocation clause. Any diagram-dependent effect is rejected as bookkeeping artifact. If a claimed linking measure changes when we redraw the loops or wiggle them without cutting, it is not a real topological token. It is not certified. It goes to the negative archive as pseudo-topology. Now we close with a concrete linking log artifact, spoken. We can narrate it like this. Audit artifact, linking ledger. Passport. Window W something, domain D prime, excisions recorded. Loop system gamma certified. Candidate invariant, mutual linking class. Isotopy tests, pass or fail. Diagram independence, pass or fail. Failure localization if fail. Certified token if pass. Linking class equals 0 or +1, and so on. That's it. Now, let's do one last simple mental test, because this is the one the listener can keep forever. We give them a rule they can use anywhere. Whenever you see a complex system, tangled wires, complicated process chains, messy social dynamics, confusing physics diagrams, ask two questions. First, can we remove this complexity by smooth reshaping without cutting any connections? If yes, it was geometry, not topology. Second, if we cannot remove it without cutting, then we have topology. And if it is topology, we can often classify it with a small token set. That is the essence of part 33. We don't worship complexity, we audit it. We ask, is it real structure or is it just a messy drawing? And the compiler enforces that answer. Before we end, we include a required note to the listener about deeper formal work. If you want to go deeper than this audio layer, if you want the formal definitions, proofs, and the full gate machinery written in mathematical detail, you can find the formal work on Zenodo by searching for holophase. Now we lock the part. Part 33 complete. We have certified that multi-defect topology can contain invariant linking information beyond charge sums, but only if it survives isotopy and admissible redescription. We have installed the isotopy invariance gate as a mandatory filter. Diagram-dependent effects are evoked as bookkeeping artifacts. What remains is the linking class token, complexity distilled to pure topology. Salam, peace be upon you.